Kimi Antonelli started the British Grand Prix on pole and finished it outside the points after his car broke down. That result changed the gap between him and George Russell in the championship. So let's go through the race at Silverstone and work out what led to the confrontation. How Kimi Antonelli's Silverstone dominance unraveled. Let's set the scene with the facts, in order, exactly as they happened. Antonelli arrived at Silverstone leading the 2026 Drivers' Championship. He had a strong Saturday, he won the sprint race, and then took pole position for Sunday's Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc lined up second, Lewis Hamilton was third. George Russell, Antonelli's teammate, qualified fourth. Going into the weekend, Antonelli led Russell by 40 points, and the sprint win pushed that to 43. The race did not start the way pole usually suggests. At the lights, both Ferraris got ahead of Antonelli off the line. Leclerc took the lead. Hamilton slotted into second. Antonelli dropped to third on the opening lap. Antonelli then went to work. He caught and passed Hamilton for second place around lap 11 and set his sights on Leclerc. Leclerc pitted first. When Leclerc made his stop, the lead moved to Antonelli. Antonelli stayed out longer, pitting on lap 36, and came back onto the track with fresher tyres than the Ferrari. That tyre difference is what set up the finish everyone expected. Antonelli rejoined some seconds behind Leclerc and started to close. He brought the gap down to under 3 seconds with 11 laps to go, and he was the faster car on track. On paper, a move for the win was coming, then it stopped. On lap 41, Antonelli reported a problem. Mercedes later identified it as a front left wheel shield failure. His steering was affected, and the car would not turn into the corners the way it had. The team pitted him to try to fix it, could not solve it, and pitted him a second time to remove the debris. By the time that was done, Antonelli had dropped to 10th. From there, it got worse. Antonelli stayed out to fight for the final points position. While he wrestled the car, he ran wide and exceeded track limits for a fourth time, which carried a 5-second penalty. On lap 48, Max Verstappen crashed at Stowe and the safety car came out. The race ended under that safety car. Antonelli took the flag in 9th on the road, but the 5-second penalty and the bunched field dropped him to 16th with no points at the front. The result was clear. Charles Leclerc won the Grand Prix, his first win of the season and his first at Silverstone. George Russell finished second. Lewis Hamilton finished third. Russell's second place cut Antonelli's championship lead from 43 down to 25 points. So that is the shape of the day. Pole, a sprint win, a lost start, a recovery to second, a chase for the lead, a wheel shield failure, a penalty, a crash for someone else, a safety car, and a finish outside the points. Antonelli's car broke, and Russell came away with a big result. Those are the pieces. Now we take them apart one at a time. The heartbreaking mechanical failure that stole Antonelli's victory. Start with the part of the title that is not in dispute, the car that broke down. For most of the afternoon, Antonelli was the driver everyone was watching. He had clawed his way back to second, he had the fresher tyres, and he was reeling Leclerc in at a rate that made a pass look inevitable. This was shaping up to be the maiden Grand Prix victory that his season had been building toward. And then, in the space of a single lap, the whole thing came apart in the cruelest way imaginable.
Having a very shocking turn when Kimi started to have mechanical issues. Kimi very abruptly started to slow down, losing a number of positions.
Antonelli himself couldn't immediately explain it. He said he'd hit the same curb every lap, and on the lap it broke, he'd hit it even less than before, yet he felt something snap instantly. Mercedes were left scrambling in the garage, first suspecting the front wing, then realizing the truth was worse. Team principal Toto Wolff didn't hide from it afterwards, telling Sky Sports flatly that a car should not break, and that the fault sat with the team, not the driver. Here is where the story turns from heartbreak into something more revealing. A broken car is one thing. What Antonelli chose to do with it is another. Instead of parking a machine that had effectively been ruined, he begged to stay out, hunting a single solitary point as if it were the win he'd just been robbed of.
Radio, you heard him desperately telling everyone that he could try to finish despite the issues, because he wanted to do his best to get at least 1 point.
That decision carried a cost. His race engineer, Peter Bonington, had already suggested he box and retire the car, because the wheel shield had failed and the thing was barely drivable. Antonelli overruled that instinct. He wanted, in his own words, to show the mindset that he brings every time he goes on track. Mercedes' technical side later described the car as having gone very lazy and almost undrivable, and praised the teenager's refusal to give in. The refusal is exactly what cost him. Fighting a car that wouldn't turn, he ran wide, tripped his 4th track limits warning, and inherited a 5-second penalty for the trouble. He called the penalty a joke over the radio, then later accepted that rules are rules, and there was nothing he could do. 1 point became 0 points. A near certain win became 16th. And yet the people describing his season keep landing on the same conclusion, that a devastating afternoon still told us something valuable about the driver underneath the result.
Ended up working out for him. What we did learn about his mentality is that he not only has a desire to fight, he has a very strong refusal to give up, even when the odds seem impossible.
So the car broke down, half of the title is rock solid. It happened, it was catastrophic, and it cost Antonelli a probable win and any points at all. Hold on to that image of a young driver fighting a doomed car for a single point, because it matters when we get to the confrontation. But there's a name missing from this half of the story. Antonelli's car broke, not Russell's, and that's where the picture starts to get complicated. Russell's unlikely podium, survival strategy, and others' misfortune. Now to the second load-bearing word in the title, winning, because to accuse George Russell of winning only because his car broke down, Russell first has to have won something. So let's follow the Brits' afternoon, because it's a genuinely wild ride, and it explains everything about how he ended up on that podium. The uncomfortable truth for Russell is that he was nowhere near the pace all weekend. He'd been beaten by his teammate on Saturday, out-qualified into fourth, and he spent the race fighting, not for the lead, but for the final podium place against Verstappen and Hamilton. His own straight-line speed had him baffled. He told reporters he was losing all his speed on the straights, and that the whole Mercedes camp couldn't work out why. This was survival, not domination. Then, his own misfortune struck. Russell picked up a slow puncture while battling for third, forcing an unscheduled stop that dumped him all the way down to seventh with the race running out of laps. At that moment, a first ever podium at his home race looked completely dead. If you'd told him then that he'd finish second, he later admitted he wouldn't have been able to comprehend it. What lifted him from seventh back to second wasn't pace. It was a perfect storm of other people's disasters. First, Antonelli's wheel shield exploded his afternoon and removed a car that had been comfortably ahead. Then Verstappen threw his Red Bull into the gravel at Stowe and triggered the late safety car. And then came the decisive move on the pit wall. When that safety car appeared, Mercedes gambled by leaving Russell out, while Ferrari dived in to service Hamilton. That single call vaulted Russell ahead of Hamilton for second, and because the race finished behind the safety car, Hamilton never got the chance to use his fresh tyres to take the place back. Now hold on, because the wording of the title matters here, and this is the crucial detail. Russell finished second. He did not win. The winner of the 2026 British Grand Prix was Charles Leclerc, who took Ferrari's first victory of the year while Russell collected the runner-up trophy behind him. Even Leclerc admitted that without Antonelli's problem, the win would have been difficult to claim. So if anyone technically won because a car broke down, the honest answer points at the Ferrari driver, not at Russell. But let's be fair to the spirit of the title, because from a championship point of view, Russell absolutely gained. That second place clawed Antonelli's lead down from 43 points to 25. A huge swing, and it was the third race running that Russell had eaten into his teammate's cushion. On the raw arithmetic of the title fight, Antonelli's broken car handed Russell a lifeline he had no right to expect from his own pace. In that narrower sense, the beating heart of the title is real. Russell profited enormously from a failure that wasn't his. The problem is what the title does next. It takes that genuine, uncomfortable truth that Russell benefited from Antonelli's breakdown, and it stretches it into two much bigger claims, that Russell won and that Antonelli then went and confronted him about it. We've now dealt with one. The car that broke was Antonelli's, the driver who won was Leclerc, and Russell finished second off the back of a puncture, a crash, and a strategy gamble. So that leaves the biggest claim of all still standing. Did the confrontation actually happen? Inside the Mercedes rivalry, respect over resentment at Silverstone. To answer that, you have to understand the relationship these two men are actually in, because confrontation is a very specific word, and the dynamic at Mercedes is stranger and more interesting than a simple feud. This is a rivalry, make no mistake. It's the central storyline of Mercedes' season, a 28-year-old established number one against a 19-year-old who has frankly hijacked the entire narrative. Antonelli is the youngest championship leader in the sport's history, and he built that lead with a run of 5 straight Grand Prix wins that nobody saw coming. The way pundits have started framing the intra-team dynamic tells you everything about the power shift.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you've got little Kimi as Luke Skywalker. Well, Kimi's coming up with a longer, brighter lightsaber right now.
It's a striking image, the wise veteran suddenly having to fend off the apprentice who's growing more dangerous by the week. And the analysts don't think that threat is going away. Because the truly frightening thing about Antonelli isn't just his current speed, it's his trajectory.
Kimi is, he's still getting better faster than anyone else because he's on a steeper part of his learning curve.
So there's every ingredient here for exactly the kind of bad blood the title promises. Teammates in the same car, one championship on the line, an established star being upstaged by a rookie, and a race where the older man walked away with the point swing, while the younger one walked away with nothing. If ever there was a weekend for a confrontation to erupt, this was it. And here's where reality refuses to cooperate with the headline. Instead of tension, what came out of Silverstone was something close to the opposite. Russell, the man who supposedly did the winning, then spent his post-race interviews doing something you almost never see. He talked himself down and talked his rival up. Russell flatly refused to celebrate a podium he felt he hadn't earned. He said he'd take the result, but that it wasn't deserved, and admitted he'd have been more satisfied with the race in Canada, where he broke down from the lead, than standing on the second step here. He was even more explicit about the championship picture. Asked whether the luck between the two of them had finally evened out, Russell conceded that Antonelli deserves to be ahead of him, that the Italian had done the better job all year, and that a 25-point gap in his teammates' favor was fair. Read that back. The man the title accuses of an ill-gotten win is the same man publicly saying he didn't deserve second and that his rival deserves to be leading the championship. He even acknowledged that on merit Antonelli would have finished ahead of him at Silverstone had the luck been equal. That is not the posture of a man bracing for a confrontation. That is a man conceding the argument before it's even been made. So where does that leave Antonelli? He had every reason to be furious, but every word out of him was aimed at his broken car and the steward's penalty, not at his teammate. Which brings us finally to the claim the entire title is built on. Did the confrontation really happen? Let's put the title on trial, piece by piece, and reach a verdict. The claim is Kimi Antonelli confronts George Russell for winning only because his car broke down. 3 separate assertions are packed in there, and we can now test each one against what actually happened at Silverstone. Assertion 1. Antonelli's car broke down. True, completely. A front left wheel shield failed on lap 41 while he was chasing the lead, wrecked his steering, and turned a probable win into a 16th place finish with 0 points. No argument there. This is the one solid brick the whole headline is built on. Assertion 2. George Russell won. False. Russell finished second. The winner of the 2026 British Grand Prix was Charles Leclerc, taking Ferrari's first victory of the season. Russell's runner-up finish was real and it was valuable, but winning is simply the wrong word for what he did. And there's a deeper problem hiding in the phrasing. The title says Russell won only because his car broke down. Whose car? The natural reading is that a breakdown handed Russell victory, but Russell's own car didn't fail. It was Antonelli's car that broke. Russell's second place actually came off the back of his own slow puncture. Verstappen's crash, a Hamilton pit stop, and a Mercedes strategy gamble on the safety car. Antonelli's failure was one ingredient in that, and a big one for the championship math, but it wasn't a lone golden ticket to a win that never even was a win. Assertion 3. Antonelli confronted Russell. This is the one that collapses entirely, and it takes the emotional core of the title down with it. There is no confrontation anywhere in this story. Antonelli's frustration was pointed at his own machinery, and at a track limits penalty he called a joke, never at his teammate. And Russell, far from being cornered by an angry rival, went out of his way to hand Antonelli the moral high ground, saying he didn't deserve his own podium and that Antonelli deserves to be leading the title race. When one driver is publicly praising the other and conceding the championship gap is fair, confronts is not just an exaggeration, it's the reverse of what took place. So here's the verdict. The title takes one true and genuinely painful fact, that Antonelli's car broke and cost him a win, and wraps it in 2 things that didn't happen: a Russell victory and an Antonelli confrontation. What the footage and the quotes actually show is almost the opposite story. A rookie fought a broken car to the bitter end for a single point he never got, and his older, more experienced rival responded not with gloating but with a kind of humility, insisting the kid deserves to be ahead of him. That's a far more human story than a feud, and it's the one the evidence supports.
Incredibly devastating, and Kimi has not had the best couple of weeks back to back. It does show that he will not lose this championship lead without a fight.
That's the real headline hiding under the clickbait one. The confrontation between Antonelli and Russell isn't a shouting match in a paddock. It's a championship, and it's being fought on merit, with both drivers seemingly respecting exactly how the other one earned his place in it. Antonelli still leads. Russell is closing, and honest enough to admit he shouldn't be as close as he is. The next few races will tell us whether the veteran can hold off the apprentice, or whether that brighter lightsaber really does stamp over the master. As the dust settles on Silverstone, one thing becomes crystal clear. The 2026 Formula 1 season is delivering the kind of intra-team drama that elevates the entire sport. What looked like a potential flashpoint between Mercedes teammates has instead revealed a mature, respectful rivalry that could define the championship. Looking ahead, the technical regulations and calendar offer both drivers unique opportunities. Antonelli's raw speed and rapid learning curve position him as the favorite, especially on high downforce circuits where his instinctive car control shines. Yet Russell's experience and tactical acumen, honed over years of Sunday battles, make him dangerous in variable conditions, particularly when strategy or weather enters the equation. The Silverstone weekend also highlighted Mercedes' ongoing development challenges. The front left wheel shield failure wasn't an isolated incident. It points to reliability concerns that could haunt the team in the second half of the season. Both drivers will need the engineers to solve these gremlins quickly, if either is to challenge Leclerc and Ferrari consistently. The Silverstone strategy call that helped Russell also showed the pit wall's willingness to take calculated risks, something that could pay dividends or backfire spectacularly in the upcoming races. Beyond the on-track action, the human element stands out. Antonelli's refusal to retire a broken car speaks to a generational shift. Younger drivers arriving with relentless resilience and a refusal to accept defeat. Russell's post-race humility, publicly crediting his teammate while downplaying his own result, demonstrates emotional intelligence that stabilizes the team environment. This dynamic, veteran wisdom meeting youthful fire, has produced some of F1's greatest eras, from Senna Prost to Hamilton Rosberg. For the championship, the 25-point gap remains significant but far from decisive. With more than half the season remaining, momentum swings, reliability issues, and key upgrades will decide the outcome. Antonelli must convert his qualifying prowess into consistent finishes, while Russell needs to maximize every opportunity when the car's pace isn't quite there. Fans should brace for more intense battles. The next few rounds, particularly the high-speed, technical tracks, will test both drivers' limits and Mercedes' ability to keep their internal competition healthy. Whether Antonelli's brighter lightsaber ultimately prevails or Russell's experience allows him to close the gap further, one thing is certain. This Mercedes duel is good for the sport. The real winner at Silverstone wasn't on the podium. It was the narrative of two teammates pushing each other to new heights while maintaining mutual respect. As the season intensifies, that foundation of professionalism may prove to be Mercedes' greatest strength. If you want to see how this title fight swings next, stick around, because the season is only getting started. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.